It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, David A. Bowles. Hello, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I'm looking at your bio, and there are so many things on here. Awarded lifetime membership, Texas Association of Business, served on the San Antonio Crime Prevention Commission, served on the board of directors, 100 Club of San Antonio. Now, I have never served on a board. What exactly does one do on a board?
We kind of watch over the managers generally. Every nonprofit needs to have a good board, and of course that 100 Club that you talked about, that was an organization that was put together to serve the public servants, fire and police in the area. And it's grown into a national organization now. Nearly every major city has a 100 Club. And we support families of firemen and policemen lost in the line of duty. And I served on that as the longest-serving board member on there. I think they kept me around because I knew where all the skeletons was there. But it's a pretty big organization now, and I'm very proud of that. And I'm proud of the Texas Association of Business, which I'm still a member, lifetime member. And I was active in business for many years, and that's where a lot of those things came from in my business. I tried to give back to my community every time I had a chance. And I turned my business over to my daughter a few years ago, and Douglas, the greatest thing I ever did, and it freed me up to start another career as a writer.
Well, that's great.
For the last 20 years, I've been a writer. I've had three jobs in my life, and this is my third one, and probably my last one. And I'm enjoying it more than any of it. I'm making less money, but I'm enjoying it.
Well, that's the important thing, is that you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
What was your job that you turned over to your daughter? What was the business?
I owned a company with my name, Dave Bowles, Inc., and we were kind of a computer-based business. We helped merchants with their pay stuff. We did all kinds of things with credit cards and checks and that sort of thing. And my daughter's taken that business and put it on steroids. So it was time. I'm glad I stepped down.
Okay.
And so I became a full-time author, and I spent the last 20 years researching and writing the story of the Westward Sagas.
Now, this series is based on your great-grandmother's history?
Her family.
Her family.
Her family.
Okay.
They came to Texas in 1836, and we. I first researched them. When you do your genealogy, you kind of start with your grandparents, great-grandparents, and start moving back. And I ended up with the family, and it came out of Chester, Pennsylvania in 1750. And so I wrote the books in chronological order, starting with The Spring House, which was a book that started about 10 years before the American Revolution.
Oh, all right.
And it kind of brings in how that all came about.
I got to say that a trip from Pennsylvania to Texas in those days must have been grueling, because that would have been before the railroad, right?
Well, it's before a lot of things. I mean, wagons couldn't hardly travel through in those days down to what they call the old wagon trail from up in Pennsylvania down to North Carolina. And it took them 100 years. They started, the series starts in about 1750, and right now I'm at 1850. So, it's taken it took them 100 years to get to Texas.
That's amazing. And, I've read some stories about various people that traveled across the country trying to get to the West in the 1800s. Billy the Kid's story is one that I know. And it took like 3 months or something with wagons. And so many people died along the way from God knows what. So
yes, everything.
Yeah.
Cholera mainly.
Yeah, diseases or Indian attacks or just, Wild West cowboys coming to rob them. And, anything. It was an amazing...
They had to be tough, Douglas.
They certainly did have to be
tough.
They
had to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to write? Was it this story that was in your head and you said, okay, I'm going to just get it out there? Is that what made you decide to be an author?
When I was 9 years old, I was sitting on the front porch with my family, and I heard the story about this little 9-year-old boy that had been captured right there in Austin, Texas, on January the 21st of 1841. And they told me the story, and I thought right then, I said, why hasn't somebody written about this? And there was very little written about it, and there was a reason for it. But it was a political reason why there wasn't anything much at the time. There was a little blurb in the paper in Austin, a paper that they had back in the 1841s, and I was able to find it on microfiche. Well, I can't tell you. Have you ever looked anything up on microfiche?
Oh, well, not since I was in high school, but yeah, I remember it.
You crank your arm off, to find what you want. And I knew it was there, and I found it. And it was a little story about him captured. And then I kept doing research, and of all things, I find several letters. And the letters detailed quite well what happened to this little boy and all the good Samaritans that went to work, including Sam Houston, who was, our president of the Republic of Texas twice and governor twice, and then second United States senator from Texas. And he wrote I found in letters he wrote to his wife when he was in Austin as a legislature from Missouri, St. Augustine County. He wrote his wife a letter, and he wrote her a letter every day. And someone published a book about Sam Houston's letters. And in that, someone told me, said, you need to go read this letter. And I found it, and sure enough, he in detail, he told about the abduction of this little boy and his father. Yeah, little Fayette Smith was his name, was captured by the Indians, and his father was killed. Fayette was injured, and they walked him all the way to Santa Fe, New Mexico, with his Achilles heels cut in the dead of winter with no shoes.
Yeah.
And when I presented that to a professor that I was taking a class with about a book, he says, well, and I did write it as historical fiction. And because, there's just too much I didn't know, I had to fill in a lot. And the professor said, hey, you've got this a 9-year-old boy with a French name from Texas who gets captured by the Indians and walks barefooted to Santa Fe, New Mexico from Austin, Texas. That's about 800 miles. And he says, I just don't think anybody's going to believe that story, and I just let him go on. He said, but it's a damn good story. But he said, maybe you need to make that little boy maybe 15 years old or something like that. And that maybe they had him on a horse part of the time and this and that. And I just let him go on. When he got through, I started pulling out all my documentation I had and told him that he was a family member. He would have been a very distant cousin. He was the nephew of this grandmother, or actually her first cousin to this grandmother that I told you about, who was the first woman child born in Austin, Texas, back in 1841. And anyhow, it's a true story, and it's the story kind of like it's written with two journeys. Fayette's journey, and then the next chapter will be about Will and where he's on the trail looking for him, and their paths cross quite a few times in the two journeys, and it makes quite an interesting story. And it won the North Texas Book Award for Best Historical Fiction year in 2019.
Okay.
So and now I've written a sequel to it, and it goes on right on up to 1850.
I was going to ask you, but then you sort of answered my question, because I was going to ask you, how did you find out all of this information? But then you said it's historical fiction. So you took the basic story of your great-grandmother and then just made these characters? Is that how you did it?
No, they're all true characters, except for a very few that they would meet on the. We don't have. Well, I was fortunate enough to find out who the Good Samaritans were, and I acknowledged them in the book. And they were the people that got the boy away from the Indians and got him on a wagon train down the Santa Fe Trail back to St. Louis, Missouri, where he caught up then with his grandfather. So yes, all that's true. But along the way, I've added some characters to kind of give the story. I added a Mexican Indian guide who makes quite a good character, and but it's real easy in my books to tell what is fiction and what is not fiction.
Okay, well, I guess then my question is valid, because how do you find all of this information?
I find enough, and I'll tell you how I do it. I had someone ask me this last night. I drew a timeline of historic events that I thought were important for my series. And then I went and researched my family as much as I could with letters, not just going into Ancestry.com and finding out the year they were born and all that, but I literally went to courthouses and pulled every record I could find. I had some fortuitous happenstance in that when my family got to Texas, my great-grandfather was appointed the first county judge of Travis County, Texas, which is a new county and where the capital of the Republic of Texas was going to be situated. And he told Maribel Lamar, the president of Texas at that time, we're talking 1839, he said, I'm too old to be going out and surveying and all. He was a surveyor and a lawyer. He says, I have a son. He's young. He can do that. And I think you ought to appoint him to be the county, what they call the Supreme Court Justice in those days, which sounds like a judicial term, but it's not. It's a chief executive officer of the county. And the county was a huge county that went all the way up into Comancheria. My four great-granddad said, his name was Thomas W. Smith. He said, can't do it. So they made the boy the county, and if he would be the treasurer, and he became the treasurer. So the first volume 1 of the Travis County Archives, were written in my grandfather's hand for the financial part of the ledger, and then it was written in his son, James W. Smith's handwriting, so up until August the 7th. And by August, in 18 months, both of them were killed by Indians in separate incidents, and the little boy was captured. And I referred to earlier about there wasn't much written up about it, and I couldn't figure it out, and it took me years to get that figured out in my mind. And what was, Houston wanted the capital to be taken back to the town that bore his name, Houston, Texas. And the people in Austin had built that town to be the capital, and they didn't want to let go of it. And Houston was using the Indian danger and the fact that Mexico could easily come up into Austin and again take over. And they didn't want to scare people away from letting Austin be the capital. So they didn't make big to-dos. They had in an 18-month period, they had 39 men that were massacred by Indians. Quite a few young maidens were captured, and they kept it really quiet for that reason, that they didn't want the people to move the capital back to Houston.
Okay.
And that's another story.
Okay.
That would be another book.
We've got just about 1 minute left, and I want to make sure we get the book in that you are promoting, called Sheriff of Starr County. This is the 5th book in the series. This takes place, what is the time frame that this one is in? Is this late 1800s?
Right after the Mexican-American War. Will fought the Mexican-American War, and then he was appointed, this character, real-life character, was appointed the first sheriff of Starr County, Texas. And that is the land that was the border land that was in dispute between Mexico and Texas. They got the rivers mixed up, the Nueces mixed up with Rio Grande. And anyhow, after the treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, that land was Mexico conceded that land belonged to Texas. And so suddenly all these people that Will had to enforce, they had been residents of Mexico and under Spanish rule for 300 years. And suddenly here's a sheriff comes to town who doesn't speak their language, doesn't understand their customs. So it makes for one heck of a story.
Well, it sounds like it. And the book is coming out.
We've got some great, February the 7th. We're having our launch, and we're having a signing at the Pearl at the Twig Bookstore in San Antonio, Texas, here in my hometown. And we're looking for a big turnout there. And it'll be available on Amazon.com, on my website, westwardsagas.com. I'm excited about the book.
Okay. Well, we have to wind this down, David. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Best of luck with your book launch, February 7th. And again, your website, you said, was westwardsagas.com?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
And thank you so much, Douglas, for the opportunity.
Well, it's nice meeting you. Take care.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
Hey, this is Ray Powers. Don't touch anything. You've got it right where you need it. Tuned in to the Douglas Coleman Show. You heard me.
Okay, please welcome back to the Douglas Coleman Show, Breakfield and Burkey. Hi, guys. How are you?
Terrific. How about yourself?
Doing fine, thank you. Thank you for coming back on the show. You were just on a couple of months ago, I think, and
yes,
you had your latest book in the Enigma series was out, Enigma Factor. Yeah, I think that's what we talked about.
We did talk about Enigma Factor, and it was the second edition. It's actually the very first book in the series, sir.
Oh, okay. How many books in the series altogether now?
There are 12 in the Enigma series.
Oh, okay. How long have you been writing that one?
The Enigma series we started in about 2014.
Actually 2010. That's when we began the series. And then 2012 we saw the first printing. And it's been a train ride all the way from there.
About one a year you put out?
Well, then for a while we were doing like 2.2 books a year, but we kind of ratcheted back because what's happening is that we got hooked on coming up with short stories as ways to be able to tell some of the backstory material for the series that didn't quite fit in the main novels.
Okay, so this time you're back to promote your new book called Fears, Tears, and Cheers. And why don't you tell us about that?
You know, it's so glad that you asked. So Fears, Cheers, or Tears, Fears, Tears, or Cheers is a short story, and it is a backstory. And it's a backstory that features one of the primary characters from the series that is heading up something called the Cats Team. And so his name is JJ Rodriguez, and he is fallen in love with this absolutely gorgeous powerhouse supermodel named Joe. And she doesn't think she's good enough for him because he's a really smart geek, and he doesn't think he's good enough for her because she's world famous. So it's kind of it's kind of a twisted little story.
Well, I mean, she's being adored by millions. She's on everybody's want list from a female standpoint, and so it's like it's real hard to compete with with that. I mean, trust me, I got the same problem.
Okay, but this has nothing to do with your Enigma series, right? It's a completely different story.
It is it's a long short story. It's a backstory for one of the leaders of the Enigma series, which is JJ. So there's two groups within the Enigma series. One is called the R group, which is purely a digital intervention for the cyber fighting and the cyber crime fighting. JJ heads up a group that actually does a lot more feet on the streets along with the technology. So yes, it's a part of the backstory to the Enigma series, Douglas.
Okay. Why did you guys decide to write this?
We wrote this particular story because we wanted to feature a woman character, which is the Joe character in this story, being empowered to make a difference. And so essentially this woman has a really poor start. She became a supermodel, but she's absolutely terrified of drones. And so this is about how her journey on being afraid of drones, being put almost to tears from drones, and then finding a really good reason to master piloting a drone and becoming a drone master pilot.
So it's a lot like the post-traumatic syndrome that a lot of veterans have, but we all have those trigger mechanisms. We all have those harsh moments in our lives that are defining. and sometimes we heal from them completely. But there's always that X factor that all of a sudden something triggers an anxiety attack. It says you didn't get away from it mentally, and so we explore that with this particular story and how she is overcome, how she deals with it, and what does success look like for this kind of an event.
I kind of forget what the Enigma series was all about. Can you give like a very broad overview of the whole series, just in case for people that didn't hear the first interview?
Well, thank you for the question. Sure, I'd be happy to. So the Enigma series itself is founded based on the Enigma machine, which is the encryption device that goes into all of our modern day computers and iPhones and all of that. And it was actually used primarily initially in 1939 to encrypt the troop movements of the Germans. And it was stolen, and discovering its secrets was how the war shifted and the Allies won the war. So we took that as the initial foundation for the series and brought it all the way to modern day because it's part of computers, part of technology, part of the internet itself. And so the Enigma series is, at the baseline, the cyber good guys of the R group versus the cyber thugs of the dark net. And so there are different characters that make that up, and JJ is one of the good guys in that scenario.
So this is the Enigma as in Alan Turing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as that all of the battle plans, the communications between Berlin and the ambassadors in all the different countries, nobody could read the transmissions between the two of them and couldn't figure out what was going on until it was too late. So stealing the Enigma machine, learning its secrets, which is what Alan Turing did in 1942, 43, and then carefully making sure they used the information and help defeat some of the problems that the Germans were creating, and turning. We had this group of people, the R group, that said, what if we kept a copy of it and decided to use it for protecting everybody and anybody on the good side from a private sector. So rather than the government having all the control, the R group says we'll set up an information dynasty, and we will also help broker the ability to be able to defeat the bad guys.
How long do you think this series is going to go on? I mean, some people write 3 books and a series is finished, and others I've heard write 25, 30. Do you have any criteria for saying, okay, this is going to be the last book, or do you just keep going with it?
Your timing could not be better, Douglas. As it turns out, we actually had an argument last year at the beginning of the year about delivering a book 13. And unfortunately, I'm a very superstitious person, and I decided I didn't want to be like an elevator and skip a number. We would just end the series. But we didn't really want to end the series because there's too many technology threats that are out there and vulnerabilities that we all face from the cyber thugs, the darknet, however you want to label it. And so this year we decided we would take it to the next generation level. And so we are releasing the book 1 in the new series, which is actually called the Enigma Heirs, which is the 3rd generation of the R group who have taken over actually the R group and cats.
Oh, well, that was smart.
So you do. That book's coming out in March, and it's on pre-order right now. So really good, Douglas. I'm so glad. It's called, the series is Enigma Heirs, and the book is called Enigma Tracer.
Okay. Are you self-published, or do you have a publisher?
We are small press or self-published, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. No, because sometimes the publishers will kind of politely dictate how many books they think they want in the series. So I didn't know if you were getting pressure from outside or if this was strictly your call.
Now, the only pressure, Doug, the only pressure we're getting is like, when's the next one coming out? Doggone it.
From your readers,
From the readers, right? Yeah.
All right. Well, this interview is going to be a little bit shorter than the other one because the other one we did a lot of background on you guys, and I don't want to repeat that again. It encourages people to go and look at the first interview.
That's right.
Since you've already been on. So, was there anything else you wanted to mention while you're here?
Well, I mean, the Fears, Tears, or Cheers is one of 10 short stories. So there's a variety of short story material out there in addition to the 12 novels that we have available on our website, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, of course, and all of them, well, most of them have got Audible formats as well. So if you're a listener rather than a reader, we've got some very good options with our voice actor, Derek Scholes, and we're quite proud of the work that we crank out with him.
Okay, are you going to do more of these sort of, what would you call it, like an appendix almost, right? The short stories? Is it sort of an appendix to the series?
A short story or a backstory. And really the reason they started, Douglas, is because reviewers would say, hey, we want to learn more about this person. And when you create and craft a novel, any novel, especially a long series novel, there are parts that can go into a story and into the novel itself. And there are parts that maybe don't help drive the novel forward that we have been requested on and off to provide some additional detail on. And that's how we started down that path, to be honest.
Well, and the best one that we had was where somebody said, where did this R group come from? And so we actually have the backstory built as a prequel to the first 12 books called Out of Poland. And that's where we define the motivation and the characters that raid the Germans and steal their Enigma machine to get it to the Allies, and that's where they make the copy. So, very interesting, very much historical fiction, but based on historical facts.
Okay, now this one is out now?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, when did it release?
Out of Poland was released in 2021, at the end of 2021.
Yeah.
Fears, Tears, and Cheers it came out at the end of 2021?
No, 2022, excuse me.
Okay, all right. And it is available now, I assume.
It is. It's available on Amazon. It's an ebook.
Do you want to give out your website?
Happy to do so. So the website is enigmaseries.com, ENIGMASERIES.com. And the Enigma series can also be found on YouTube, which holds the book trailers and, little separate interviews that we may have done and a how-to that was recently created by Charles that's out there, and a little background on the Enigma machine itself for those people that aren't familiar with that capability or the history of that device.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming back, and best of luck with Fears, Tears, or Cheers. Book 1 of the new Enigma series, you said, is available for pre-order now.
It is, yeah. And that's Enigma Tracer.
Enigma Tracer. Okay. All right, very good. Well, thanks again. It was nice talking to you, and best of luck with all your projects.
Thank you so much, sir. You have a great day.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.